Christmas time means the busiest time of the year for a lot of makers. For some of us, it's a rush of last minute orders we swear we weren't going to accept, while for others, it's that decision to make gifts instead of buying them. I had set out to make this gift for my parents months ago. Don't worry, it's not the only thing they're getting, but life got in the way, as it does. And myself and my trim router stopped seeing eye to eye. Or should that be eye to route a bit? With some client projects to take care of, I decided that this one could wait. During that time to think, ruminate, and question whether I really wanted to make what should be a simple gift, I decided I would do it without the router. I have Forstner drill bits, a jigsaw, chisels, and a disc sander. That's really all you need to make one of these wine bottle holders. So after tracing the damaged template onto this piece of silky oak, I got to drilling. I wasn't too concerned about being perfectly straight here. Close enough is good enough. But it did get me thinking that I should get my hands on one of those portable benchtop drilling attachments to make this even easier. Anyway, a bit of drilling from both sides as this timber was thicker than my Forstner could handle going one way, and I had a good looking circle. From there I dropped the size down of the Forstner bit and drilled the holes for where the two wine glasses will sit. Again, they didn't have to be perfect. Now onto the jigsaw. There's a somewhat interesting story behind this jigsaw. I'm not quite Grandpa Simpson, but just stick around for a moment. You see, it was actually my grandfather's, and when he passed away, I received some of his tools. There was this jigsaw, the sander, which you'll see me using later, is another, and I have a massive socket set that has served me well for the past 5 years or so. Every time I make something, there is a part of him in it, given his old sander does pretty much all the sanding for all of my projects. So, with Pa's jigsaw that honestly needs a new blade, I roughly carved out the bulk of the timber, getting relatively close to the line I traced earlier. Now, if you're not having a fight with your trim router, this is where you could use a flush trim bit and just cut everything flush with the template. But as I said earlier, myself and my router aren't on speaking terms. So over to this little Aceto's disc sander we go. And this is honestly a fantastic little machine. Now, it might not be as powerful as some of the other larger benchtop sanders that are going around, but for about $50, it's worth the money and it's done the job that I needed it to do here. I did make this harder than it needed to be though. I stuck on some 80 grit sandpaper thinking it was going to be pretty easy to just knock down these edges and get it to the line that I had drawn earlier. So it took quite a while to sand off the remainder of the timber, and I went to Hammer Barn shortly after this to pick up some 60 grit, which on a project I was doing shortly after this one made a hell of a difference. You could go with the jigsaw here if you trust your hand-eye coordination, but knowing I had a blunt blade and no replacements, I decided against that. I don't have a bandsaw, which would be another option and frankly the best suited for this job. I decided I will go with this tiny 6mm Forstner bit to drill out a bunch of small holes. Now you'll only see me do this on one side of the holder. Rest assured I did the same on both sides, but I did have an assistant join me. My oldest son Oliver, who is 5, popped in and did some drilling himself, but I prefer not to record him to post on the internet. After we both did some drilling, it was over to the hand tools. Once that was done, it was over to the old sander for the sanding process. Starting at 80 grit, I worked my way up to 120 and then 180. I don't have it recorded here, but I used the same grits to sand the inside of the slots and hole, but I did that by hand. I also made sure to just round off the edges and make everything nice and smooth to the touch. With the sanding all done, it was time for some liquid beeswax. 2 coats of that and I was done. Honestly, the easiest project I've ever made.